I proposed to the woman I love, and my family responded by making her cry the very first time they met her. They didn't ask what she liked. They only asked, "Why her?" So I stopped asking for permission. I just sent the invitation. And if they don't show up, I'm still getting married. Because for the first time in my life, I chose to stand up for myself. When I love someone, and already know my family won't approve, I knew I was doing something wrong the moment I fell in love with her. Wrong by my family's standards. Wrong by the rules of religion, tradition, and ancestral beliefs I had been raised on. But to me, nothing had ever felt more right. She wasn't the kind of woman my family had imagined I would marry. She didn't share our faith. She didn't come from a culturally similar background. She didn't use submissive language when speaking to elders. But she looked at me with honesty in her eyes. She sat by my side on nights I was exhausted from working until midnight. She didn't need me to be someone's pride. She just wanted me to be me. And for the first time in my life, I felt chosen, not for my role, but for who I really was. When we fell in love, I didn't tell my family right away, not because I was ashamed, but because I already knew, clearly and painfully, that they would disapprove. I was raised in a household so traditional it felt suffocating. Religion was the rulebook. Obedience was the measure of love. Children didn't bring shame to their parents, even if that meant sacrificing their own lives. And I used to be the good son. I obeyed. I got straight A's, graduated from a prestigious university, got a good job, no debt, no trouble. I was the family's hope, or so they said. But when I said, "I'm in love, and I'd like to introduce her to everyone," the entire dinner table went silent. My mother said nothing, just lifted her teacup, her hand slightly trembling. My brother looked at me like I had just renounced our religion, and my father, he smiled. But not with joy. It was a slow, cold smile that said, "You'll come to your senses." And in that moment, I knew. No matter how hard I tried, they wouldn't accept her easily. Still, I hoped. I believed, fragile and desperate, that once they meet her, once they see how kind and thoughtful she is, things will change. I didn't expect that the first time they met her would be the moment I saw just how deep the invisible wall between me and my family had always been. I still remember the first time she met my family. We had prepared, not our appearance, but our hearts. I told her beforehand, "They can be a bit distant, but if you just be yourself, gentle, honest, I believe things will be okay." She smiled. "I'm not afraid. I'm not coming to convince them. Just to understand more about you." And I truly believed that. When they saw her, someone who always respects others, who's never rude or fake, they would soften. They would realize that even if she wasn't like them, she wasn't bad. But I was wrong. The atmosphere turned cold the moment we walked into the house. My mother looked her up and down. No harsh words, no direct disapproval, just silence. A silence so sharp it cut deeper than shouting. My brother, the self-appointed keeper of tradition, asked a few polite questions. "What religion is your family? How does your family celebrate the new year? Do your parents work in any traditional professions?" And then the conversation stalled. She tried. She smiled. She talked about her work, about how she was learning my native language just to better understand me. No one asked more. No one listened. Only the occasional glances exchanged across the table, like they were sizing up something unfamiliar, off-brand, not up to standard. After dinner, no one asked her to stay longer. No one offered tea or dessert, things they always did for people I'd introduced before. And when we left, my mother said just one thing before closing the door: "Live in a way you won't regret." On the way home, she held my hand, saying nothing. Her eyes were red. I asked, "Are you okay?" She nodded with a small smile. "I'm fine. I just thought they'd see me for who I am. I didn't expect they'd only see who I'm not. I felt my throat tighten. I wanted to turn around and shout, "She's the one I love. She's been kinder to me than anyone in that house ever has. Did you even see her? Did you hear her?" But I didn't. Because deep down, I knew. They had never wanted to see her in the first place. After that day, I stopped coming home as often. I stopped calling, stopped sharing. And slowly I realized, I grew up in a family where kindness didn't matter as much as similarity. If you didn't share their values, if you didn't fit their mold, you were a threat. It didn't matter how good you were. Didn't matter how much love you gave to their child. If you were different, you would never be accepted. But still, I didn't give up. I believed that with enough time, enough effort, maybe they'd finally see her. What I didn't know was, some doors don't slam shut. They're simply locked from the inside, and have been for a very long time. I used to think, maybe if I just stayed patient a little longer, a little quieter, things would get better. If I brought her home enough times, if I said enough kind things about her, my family would come around. They would see what I saw, someone kind, thoughtful, respectful, someone who treated everyone gently, even those who didn't make it easy. I used to believe that deep down, they were still good people, just scared, just not ready to open up. But that day, the day they came to visit the city we lived in, shattered every illusion I had. My parents called, said they wanted to meet us both for a serious talk. I agreed, though I had a bad feeling in my gut. I hoped it would be a conversation, but it turned out to be a courtroom. We sat in a small cafe downtown. No coffee, no casual questions, no laughter, just cold stares, sharp questions, and judgments wrapped in tradition. My mother started slowly, but every word was heavy as stone. "You two think marriage is a game? She's not of our faith. How long do you think you'll last? We're saying this because we love you, but don't come crying to us later if it falls apart." She sat quietly, hands folded in her lap beneath the table. I could feel her fingers trembling. Still, she stayed composed until my father said it. Casually, calmly, but it pierced like a blade. "Her family, you can tell just by looking. When the roots are wrong, what can you expect from the rest?" I turned to her. Her eyes were red. She didn't speak. She slowly pulled her hand away from mine and lowered her head. I had never seen her like that. Not angry, not offended, just so deeply hurt. She couldn't even find the words. We stood up before the meal was over. No one walked us out. No one called afterward. No one apologized. Back home, she didn't cry right away. She just sat on the couch, hugging a pillow, staring into the distance. After a long silence, she whispered, "I'm not mad at them. I'm just sad for you, because you're the one in the middle, and it's clear. They didn't choose you. They only choose what's right or wrong by their standards." And I understood. I realized that if I didn't stand up for the woman I love, I'd be no different from them. I'd be letting her face a family that didn't want to understand, only to win. I used to stay silent out of respect, but from that day on, I knew silence in the face of injustice isn't patience, it's complicity. So I wrote a message to my family. Each sentence clear, calm, firm. "I'm an adult. I can make my own choices. This is not some fleeting romance. If you truly support me, I'll share everything. But if you're only here to criticize or object, please don't come. Not to the wedding, not to any future moment in my life." I hit send, and I didn't wait for a response, because from now on, I don't need their approval. I only need their respect. And if even that is too much to ask, then maybe their absence is the kindest thing they've ever given me. The message I sent that day, no one replied. Not a single person. No explanations. No one asked, "Are you okay?" Not even a respectful silence. Just emptiness. I stared at my phone for 2 full days, even though I kept telling her, maybe they just need some time. But deep down I knew. It wasn't time they needed. It was me, giving in. I grew up in a family where hierarchy was law. Children didn't talk back. The decisions of elders were always right. If you wanted love, you had to submit. And the moment you stopped being obedient, you were punished with silence. No one in my family called after we walked out of that cafe. Even after I sent the wedding invitation, kind, clear, hopeful, with a message that said, "We're inviting you, not to debate faith or compare beliefs. We just want you to witness something simple. I've found the person I want to spend my life with." They read it. No reply. A week later, one of my older brothers finally texted. It was long, familiar in tone, not insulting, not direct, but perfectly crafted to make me feel wrong. "It's not that we hate your fiancée, but family is family. You're tearing us apart over a personal relationship. You're not thinking about mom and dad, you're not honoring our traditions, and now you're saying if no one supports you, they shouldn't come at all?" He ended with a sentence that hit me like a punch to the throat. "You've changed. You're not the little brother we used to know." I typed a reply, deleted it, typed again, deleted again. Then finally I wrote, "Exactly. I'm no longer that little brother, and that's why I can finally live my own life." That was it. I didn't send anything more, didn't hope for understanding. Instead, I focused on planning the wedding, choosing the music, helping her pick her dress, tasting cakes, picking flowers. For the first time ever, I was planning a major life event, without any interference from my family, and strangely enough, I felt at peace. I used to think that if my family wasn't there, I'd feel empty, that a wedding without your parents present would feel like a loss. But then I realized what I lost wasn't their presence. What I lost was the expectation that they'd ever be there for me in the way I needed them to be. And that loss happened long ago. One day, while I was quietly looking at our printed wedding invitations, she gently placed her hand on my shoulder. "Do you feel sad?" she asked, "knowing some of the people you once hoped would be there won't be?" I shook my head. Not because I wasn't sad, but because I had stopped hoping. I don't resent them anymore. I don't blame anyone for not agreeing with me. I just understand something clearer than ever. Happiness isn't something you negotiate. It's something you protect, even if you have to stand alone to do it. If they don't come, I won't erase them from my life. I'm still their son. I still remember how they once walked me to school, made Sunday lunches, held me when I was little. But I also know, from the moment they chose to turn their backs, I officially stepped out of the cage of their expectations and into the life that's truly mine. I used to think that if I ever truly turned my back on my family, I'd be overwhelmed with regret, that I'd feel empty, that I'd wake up in the middle of the night, drowning in guilt, convinced I'd become an ungrateful child. But I didn't. I didn't feel regret. I didn't feel overwhelming relief either. I just felt calm. A quiet kind of peace that felt simple, but deeply real. I started my mornings without checking the family group chat. Not because I blocked anyone, but because I stopped waiting. I ate breakfast with her, talked about what plants we might grow in our new place, chatted about sunlight and peace. Tiny things, but enough to remind me that I was finally living as myself. I went to work without carrying the weight of, I have to succeed to prove something to my parents. Now, I work because I want to build a meaningful life, not because I need to be accepted. I stopped pretending everything was okay when someone asked, "Are your parents coming to the wedding?" Now I simply say, no, and I'm not forcing them. I had never said no to my family before, until now, and I realized something. No is powerful. not as a way to rebel, but as a way to protect who you are. I said no to forcing the person I love to sit through uncomfortable family dinners. I said no to sacrificing emotional safety in my own future home just to keep the peace. I said no, not to start a war, but to end the cycle of constantly giving up myself for approval. I know somewhere out there, they still believe I've betrayed tradition, that one day, when my head cools, I'll regret this, that I'll come back, bow my head, and ask for forgiveness. But here's the truth. I don't need forgiveness for living honestly, because I haven't done anything wrong. For the first time in my life, I don't feel small. I don't feel like I have to tiptoe around people. I don't feel guilty for being happy. I still love my family. But I've stopped using that love as the rope that strangles me every time I do something different. The day I signed the venue contract for our wedding, my hand didn't shake. I didn't wait for a call from my mom. I didn't hope for a text from my dad. I just looked across the table at the woman sitting beside me, smiling with that soft, knowing look in her eyes. And I knew. I don't need 100 people at my wedding to feel like I'm making the right choice. I just need one. One person who will never ask me to choose between love and myself. The wedding day came with soft sunlight. Not blazing, not gray, just calm, like me. Warm enough, bright enough. No one from my family showed up. No reserved seats labeled parents of the groom. No relatives lining up for photos. No cookie-cutter blessings or forced smiles. But I didn't feel empty. I felt full. My friends arrived early. The ones who had stood by me through every rough chapter. The ones who didn't need blood ties to treat me like family. They hugged me. They didn't ask, "Where are your parents?" They just said, "This is your day." And they were right. That day, I finally belonged to myself. She walked toward me from the end of the aisle, wearing the white dress she once said she never imagined she'd have the courage to wear. I looked at her like the world had shrunk down to one person. The only person who believed in me, even when my own family didn't. The only person who never asked me to change, never demanded I sacrifice myself, and still chose to stay. We stood side by side, in front of the people who truly loved us, not because of our last names, not because of shared beliefs, but because we simply deserved happiness. I didn't need anyone's approval. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need a nod from people who never really listened. All I needed was to live beside someone I never had to ask permission to love. Maybe one day my family will feel regret. Maybe not. I don't guess anymore. Because from that day forward, I stopped living to please anyone but myself. I didn't get married to make anyone proud. I got married to finally begin a life that was truly mine.